The meeting took place late in the afternoon as the fading sunlight painted the glass walls of the conference room with a melancholy amber glow, seemingly foreshadowing the bitter ending about to unfold. Across from me sat Julia Montgomery, the new director of sales who had stepped into our company just 3 months earlier, poised, impeccably groomed, and draped in a stylish designer suit that accented her polished yet cold demeanor. Her carefully manicured fingers tapped rhythmically on the tablet screen before she raised her eyes to meet mine, delivering her verdict with a polite but ruthless smile. "Alex, everyone needs to make sacrifices. Your current salary structure is outdated. We're cutting your base pay by 40% and restructuring your entire commission plan." At that moment, Iowa Lex Reynolds, a 52-year-old with silver hair, earned through years of dedication, felt the sting of being dismissed and undervalued. Despite devoting the past 15 years of my life to building and sustaining the sales division of GreenWood Industries, I wasn't merely a senior VP of sales. I was the one keeping the lights on, personally nurturing relationships with our top 10 clients who relied on me more than their own internal teams. These weren't just transactional connections, they were friendships cemented over countless dinners, late-night problem-solving calls, and genuine trust cultivated over a decade and a half. Yet now, Julia casually discarded the value of those intangible assets with a detached declaration, "We're simply aligning everyone's package with industry standards." She slid a neatly typed document across the table toward me, and as I opened it, the numbers on the page hit me with brutal clarity: a staggering 40% cut to my base salary, a revised commission structure so aggressive that even doubling my efforts wouldn't return me to my previous income, and drastic reductions to my existing benefits. In that instant, I understood how she truly viewed me, as nothing more than an overpriced relic of the past, a financial burden the company needed to shed swiftly after GreenWood was acquired by a larger corporation. "When does this become effective?" I asked calmly, my voice betraying none of the anger or desperation she likely anticipated. Slightly caught off guard, Julia responded with a thin smile, "Immediately, Alex. We need everyone to adapt quickly to the company's new direction." I quietly stood up and reached out my hand for a firm handshake, signaling a silent yet unmistakable resolve. Her expression faltered briefly, clearly surprised at my composed acceptance rather than the resistance or pleading she'd expected. Later that afternoon, as I packed away personal belongings from my office, the framed photograph of my daughters smiling proudly on their graduation day, the pen set gifted by a longtime client, and an old, dust-covered sales award, I noticed Julia quietly watching from behind the glass door of her office. In her eyes, I sensed a growing unease, a realization dawning that perhaps she had miscalculated badly. In dismissing me so cavalierly, she had unknowingly handed years of carefully nurtured client relationships directly into the waiting arms of her competitors. Without anger, without slamming doors or screeching tires, I left the building feeling a chilling yet empowering clarity settling within. I knew deep down, this wasn't just about losing a high-paid executive. Julia had unknowingly set in motion something far more dangerous, a carefully calculated revenge she could not yet foresee, and a drama about to unfold from the very moment I drove calmly out of that parking lot. If you were Alex, what would you do next? Quietly accept defeat, or strike back with intelligent, calculated vengeance? Keep watching to see how Alex's satisfying tale of revenge unfolds. Asterisk. 15 years I dedicated 15 grueling, rewarding, and unforgettable years to GreenWood Industries, a modest, family-owned millwork supplier that had gradually blossomed into a robust commercial powerhouse right in the bustling heart of Austin, Texas. When I first stepped into that unassuming brick office in 2010, GreenWood was barely holding its head above water, with annual sales scraping by at around $8 million, a humble regional player among giants. Yet something stirred within me from that first day, a burning ambition ignited by the echoes of my childhood spent amid the warm scent of sawdust, resin, and the comforting hum of my father's woodworking shop in Dallas, where every piece of furniture crafted was more than a product. It was a promise of quality, reliability, and unwavering trust. My father, a stoic craftsman who instilled in me an unshakable respect for detail and precision, once told me that business is never merely transactional, it's personal, bound together by threads of trust and loyalty, stronger and deeper than any written contract could ever guarantee. Those early lessons followed me throughout life, carrying me from college graduation through several aimless sales positions, each more dissatisfying than the last, until fate finally brought me through the doors of GreenWood. It was there, within those walls steeped in the aroma of freshly cut timber, that everything finally clicked into place. And I discovered the perfect balance between my natural aptitude for woodworking knowledge and the nuanced art of salesmanship. Oliver Wainwright, GreenWood's original owner, an old-school industry veteran with a discerning eye, quickly recognized that I offered something more valuable than mere sales skills. He saw in me the potential to forge lasting relationships built upon unwavering reliability. "Alex," he had often reminded me with a knowing smile, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder, "remember, you're not selling just products. You're selling trust, security, and the peace of mind that comes with knowing someone genuinely cares." Empowered by Oliver's encouragement and mentorship, I meticulously built our sales division brick by brick, carefully selecting hungry, driven young representatives eager to learn, training them in the philosophy Oliver had instilled in me, teaching them that successful sales were never about the quick wins, but about patient, deliberate, and consistent nurturing of trust. Under my leadership, the sales division thrived beyond even my own expectations, transforming GreenWood from a modest local business into an industry heavyweight generating over $73 million annually, with my own personal accounts alone contributing over $12 million to that total. These were not just random clients. They were friends, confidants, companions in the challenges and successes of their businesses and personal lives. I knew intimate details of their lives, their children's graduations, their personal struggles, favorite vacation spots, even their weekend golf scores, and they, in turn, relied on me as a trusted advisor, someone who understood their businesses better than they themselves sometimes did. But everything began to shift one afternoon when Oliver announced he had sold GreenWood Industries to Driftmore Labs, a faceless corporate entity focused solely on numbers and efficiency, and, for the first time in years, a shadow of uncertainty crept into my otherwise steadfast confidence. Still, acquisitions were a part of the natural business cycle. I had weathered many storms throughout my career, each leaving me stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And so I convinced myself this transition would be no different, that the relationships I had forged were too strong to be shaken by corporate politics. But then, the warning signs began appearing slowly, subtle at first, like storm clouds on the distant horizon. The executive team I'd known for years replaced by unfamiliar faces, outsiders with shiny resumes and bold promises of modernizing the business model. First came the new CEO, who had never set foot inside a workshop, followed swiftly by a fresh-faced marketing director, obsessed with digital transformation but oblivious to the nuances of customer relationships. Then Julia Montgomery walked in, a Harvard graduate whose crisp designer suits and relentless focus on spreadsheets and efficiency quickly became a symbol of the impersonal new order sweeping through the company. Julia wasted no time in making her presence felt, meticulously reviewing budgets, tightening travel expenditures, demanding stringent justifications for client entertainment, and slowly but deliberately eroding my autonomy. My weekly strategy sessions with executives dwindled to monthly updates, then became sporadic check-ins only called when deemed necessary by her increasingly intrusive oversight. Her seemingly harmless adjustments soon revealed a calculated agenda. Clandestine meetings with my team, phone calls directly to my key accounts without my knowledge, even openly questioning discounts and special terms I had painstakingly negotiated to secure our clients' loyalty over the years. It became clear that her primary mission wasn't merely operational efficiency, it was to systematically dismantle everything I'd built, positioning herself as the architect of GreenWood's future while casting me aside as an outdated relic of its past. A turning point came on a deceptively ordinary afternoon when I walked into a bustling restaurant and spotted Julia huddled closely with Gabriella, my newest hire, speaking in hushed yet intense whispers. Upon noticing my entrance, Gabriella quickly diverted her gaze, embarrassment flooding her youthful face, while Julia simply waved casually, as if this unexpected encounter were nothing more than a pleasant coincidence. Later, when Gabriella awkwardly brushed off my gentle inquiry with an evasive, "just getting to know the team," I felt a knot of unease tighten in my gut, a sharp realization that the tide had irrevocably turned against me. It was no longer just business, it was personal, a betrayal quietly orchestrated beneath the polished veneer of corporate professionalism, a silent declaration of war wrapped neatly in smiles and carefully chosen words. The final blow came swiftly, during the now infamous meeting where Julia coldly informed me my compensation was outdated, reducing my base salary by 40% and gutting my commission structure, effectively pushing me toward the exit door she'd opened the day she arrived. Yet as I quietly cleared my desk, packing the remnants of 15 years into a cardboard box, an unexpected sense of calm clarity washed over me, accompanied by the steady pulse of resolve. Julia had mistakenly believed she was removing a liability, an old guard obstructing her path to glory, but what she failed to comprehend was that she had inadvertently unleashed something far more potent, the quiet but relentless fury of a man whose life's work had just been trivialized, dismissed, and thrown away without so much as a second thought. As I gently placed the last cherished item into my car, I felt not bitterness but determination coursing through my veins, whispering to me that Julia's victory was fleeting and superficial. She believed she'd ended my career with one swift strike, yet in reality, she had just ignited a far deeper game of vengeance, a game she neither anticipated nor was prepared for, one I was now fully ready to play. If you're intrigued by Alex's silent, powerful resolve and the brewing storm of revenge about to erupt, don't miss out, keep watching, as the drama unfolds in ways you'll never expect. At first, the changes brought by the Driftmore Labs acquisition seemed subtle, almost imperceptible, like distant storm clouds slowly forming along the horizon, quietly gathering strength. It started with small adjustments, gentle hints masked behind friendly corporate jargon about streamlining operations and optimizing resources, phrases seemingly harmless yet hiding a deeper, colder intent that I failed to fully recognize at first. Gradually, however, these minor shifts began accumulating, casting long shadows over the once familiar hallways of GreenWood Industries and eroding the foundation of trust I'd built with painstaking care over the past decade and a half. Travel budgets tightened incrementally, client entertainment funds, once essential tools for fostering relationships, became strictly monitored, and simple expense approvals grew increasingly bureaucratic, requiring multiple signatures from executives who scarcely knew the names of our clients, let alone understood their intricate needs. Julia Montgomery, whose presence had quickly evolved from a fresh face in an elegant suit to a dominant, authoritative figure steering the company's new direction, swiftly began exerting her influence with meticulous precision. Behind the closed glass walls of her spacious office, she spent endless hours poring over spreadsheets and reports, dissecting numbers without ever pausing to consider the human element that had always driven our success. My regular weekly strategy, meetings crucial touchpoints, where I presented concerns and updates directly to senior leadership, first shrank to monthly updates and then became mere formalities held only at her convenience, gradually sidelining me from the central decision-making process. I soon discovered, to my growing unease, that her vision for GreenWood bore little resemblance to the company I devoted so much of my life to. It was clinical, coldly data-driven, and completely detached from the warmth of relationships and personal connections that had always distinguished us from competitors. The first tangible sign of Julia's strategic maneuvering came unexpectedly one afternoon when my longtime confidant and chief financial officer, Thomas Gallagher, pulled me aside quietly after a routine budget review meeting. In the hushed tone reserved for secrets best kept in shadow, he warned me gently, "Alex, watch your back. The new management is digging deep into the existing sales compensation structures, particularly targeting legacy arrangements. His words carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I understood immediately what he was trying to convey without explicitly stating it. I was the last remaining legacy arrangement, the final obstacle standing in the path of their ruthless pursuit of cost reduction and profit maximization. My tenure, built upon trust and relationships rather than spreadsheets and data points, had become a liability in Julia's unforgiving eyes. The gravity of Thomas's warning became painfully clear a few days later, during a seemingly ordinary lunchtime when I walked into a popular downtown cafe. There, tucked discreetly into a corner booth, Julia sat closely with Gabriella, my newest and most promising recruit. Their heads were bowed low, deeply engaged in conversation that immediately halted as they sensed my presence. Gabriella quickly averted her eyes downward, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, while Julia offered only a casual polite facade, disguising the reality that I had interrupted something significant. I felt a sudden chill ripple down my spine as I watched them, sensing betrayal creeping silently into my professional sanctuary. Gabriella's subsequent evasiveness when gently questioned confirmed my fears, as she mumbled something unconvincing about Julia wanting just to get to know the team better. Her discomfort and inability to meet my eyes spoke louder than any words she could have uttered, confirming what my gut already knew. The seeds of betrayal had been sown quietly behind my back, nurtured by Julia's calculated charm and strategic promises. That evening, as the shadows stretched long across my home office desk, I sat alone, staring intently at a decade's worth of meticulously maintained sales reports, each representing not only cold numbers, but years of relentless dedication, late nights, urgent phone calls, and quiet triumphs. Each client relationship had been built carefully, intentionally, and personally, one small victory after another, accumulated into something powerful and enduring. Yet those pages suddenly seemed fragile beneath my fingertips, vulnerable to Julia's impersonal ambitions and the harsh, unforgiving glare of corporate efficiency. My phone suddenly buzzed sharply, interrupting the heavy silence. The caller ID flashed the familiar name of Frank Donnelly, purchasing director at Weston Commercial, our single largest and most loyal account. Anxiety surged momentarily in my chest, and as I answered, Frank's urgent voice crackled through the line without preamble. "Alex, what the hell is happening at GreenWood? I just received a bizarre call from a woman named Julia Montgomery, claiming she's personally taking over our account." The frustration in his voice tightened my chest further, as Frank described how Julia, without my knowledge, had aggressively questioned our long-established pricing terms and suggested imposing a rigid new vendor management system. "We have a system, Alex," Frank stated firmly, his voice edged with irritation and concern, "and it's built entirely around trust I've placed in you, personally, over 12 long years." I held my breath, knowing full well the delicate crossroads upon which we now stood, and quietly explained the recent upheaval in measured terms, careful not to let my own anger seep through my voice. Frank's reply, however, cut straight to the heart of the matter. "Alex, let me be blunt. If you're leaving GreenWood, I need you to call me immediately, because the last thing I want is to navigate this company's bureaucracy without someone like you on the other end." As Frank's words hung heavily in the air after we ended the call, I felt an indescribable clarity piercing through my anxiety and frustration, sudden, vivid realization crystallizing what Julia had fatally misunderstood. My true worth had never been the numbers printed coldly on a spreadsheet, nor the official title displayed proudly on my desk. It lay instead within the trust painstakingly built, within each carefully nurtured relationship, and within the invisible yet unbreakable bonds connecting me to the very heart of our business. Julia believed she had eliminated an expensive inconvenience, yet in truth, she had unwittingly ignited a firestorm in inevitable and relentless retaliation forged quietly in the shadows of her overconfidence. In that silent moment of revelation, a quiet determination filled my chest, displacing anxiety with fierce resolve, as I realized something profound. Julia's ambition had set her on a collision course with consequences she had never imagined. consequences I was now more than prepared to unleash, carefully and deliberately. She had unknowingly initiated a bat alone. She would soon realize she was ill-equipped to win. For in this game of relationships and loyalty, the advantage would always lie with the person who had patiently woven them together. Intrigued by how Alex will channel his quiet fury into a powerful plan of revenge, keep watching. What comes next will redefine the meaning of payback. In the aftermath of Julia Montgomery's cold announcement about slashing my base pay by 40%, the atmosphere at GreenWood Industries became charged, crackling quietly with tension beneath a deceptive facade of professional calmness. As I returned to my office to pack my belongings, the familiar walls that once resonated with pride and accomplishment now felt strangely foreign, as though they no longer belonged to the man who had spent the past 15 years nurturing this company from obscurity into industry prominence. Carefully placing each item into a plain cardboard box, my daughter's radiant smiles, captured on their graduation day, a cherished pen gifted from a grateful client, an old award once proudly displayed. Every object now felt heavier, weighed down by the bitter sense of betrayal that Julia's calculated decision had inflicted upon my heart. Through the tinted glass walls of her corner office, Julia observed silently, her expression an enigmatic mask of curiosity mixed subtly with unease, as though for the first time considering whether her strategic decision might have unforeseen repercussions. Perhaps she had expected outrage or confrontation, a desperate plea to reconsider her ruthless restructuring plans, but I offered her none of those things. Instead, my calm acceptance seemed only to unsettle her further, as if she suddenly realized I held cards she hadn't accounted for. In that lingering glance we exchanged, there lay an unspoken yet tangible awareness, a silent acknowledgement that her victory today might have unleashed consequences far beyond her imagination or control. Later that evening, sitting alone at home in the quiet sanctuary of my personal office, a room once reserved for careful planning and client strategy, I received an unexpected but telling call from Frank Donnelly at Weston Commercial. The urgency in his voice betrayed a deep sense of agitation, as he revealed that Julia had already begun aggressively contacting my top clients, claiming direct control of their accounts, pushing sudden renegotiations, and imposing unfamiliar procedures that Frank described with barely concealed disdain. She sent me a client satisfaction survey. Alex, Frank nearly spat out the words, 48 questions designed not to understand our business but to feed some cold, impersonal algorithm. Then, if that wasn't enough, she followed up with some hollow presentation about customer success metrics, as though a decade of real trust and human connection meant absolutely nothing. Listening silently to Frank's frustrations, I felt a swell of quiet determination building steadily within me. A realization crystallizing that Julia's ruthless ambition was not merely to eliminate an expensive executive, but to systematically dismantle and reconstruct every client relationship I'd so meticulously built over the years. Maintaining my composure, I calmly explained my departure, avoiding bitterness or resentment in my tone, knowing that professionalism in this critical moment would reinforce rather than diminish the strength of the relationships I'd forged. Frank's reaction, however, spoke volumes. He lowered his voice, almost conspiratorially, and said, "Listen, Alex, we've worked together too long for formalities. If you land somewhere else, call me immediately, because I'm not interested in dealing with this Harvard robot ever again." In the days following that illuminating conversation, my phone buzzed relentlessly, as one by one, clients I'd nurtured over the years reached out, their anxious inquiries confirming what I had already suspected. Julia had unleashed chaos across GreenWood's client base, ignorantly believing that a streamlined, impersonal approach would generate greater efficiency and profitability. Instead, she was rapidly alienating our most loyal customers, men and women who had trusted GreenWood Industries precisely because they valued personal integrity, reliability, and human connection, qualities Julia neither understood nor respected. Each new conversation carried echoes of disillusionment, anger, and confusion. creating ripples of uncertainty that quickly spread throughout the company's tightly knit industry circles. Yet, even amidst these disturbing developments, I refrained from directly interfering, carefully abiding by the strict terms outlined in the non-compete agreement Julia's legal team had swiftly reminded me of. A contract that prohibited me from selling competitive millwork products, but said nothing about maintaining personal relationships. This crucial distinction, buried deep within legal jargon, would soon become my strategic lifeline loophole through which my silent but powerful retaliation would ultimately emerge. Knowing the rules meticulously was critical. Knowledge, after all, is power, especially when leveraged quietly, precisely, and at exactly the right moment. A few evenings later, an unexpected visit from Thomas Gallagher deepened the intrigue surrounding Julia's aggressive strategy. Arriving discreetly at my doorstep, Thomas carried a folder, glancing nervously over his shoulder before quietly entering my home, his face pale beneath the soft glow of the porch light. "You need to see this, Alex," he said urgently, handing me the documents carefully, as though the mere possession of them might put both our careers at risk. Inside were Julia's internal strategic plans presented to GreenWood's board documents detailing precisely how she planned to systematically transfer my most valuable accounts to Gabriella and two newly appointed managers, outlining scripts for handling client objections, and even calculating precise timelines for reclaiming customer loyalty post-departure. But what immediately caught my attention, sending a jolt of anger surging through my veins, was a financial projection highlighting that my accounts represented not $12 million, as I'd always conservatively estimated, but a staggering $17 million, nearly a quarter of the company's total revenue. "She knew exactly what you were worth, Alex," Thomas whispered bitterly, "but she made sure you didn't. Julia wanted you gone because your presence threatened her entire vision. Your loyalty to relationships clashed directly with her ambition to squeeze out maximum short-term profits, regardless of long-term damage." In that moment, as Thomas departed quietly into the night, I finally understood the extent of the deception, the true betrayal behind Julia's strategic facade. GreenWood, under her guidance, had deliberately undervalued my contributions for years, exploiting my dedication while planning, quietly but methodically, to discard me once convenient. Anger briefly flared within my chest, hot and sharp, yet I refused to surrender to bitterness. Instead, the pain of betrayal hardened into an iron resolve, fueling a calm, strategic clarity that would serve as my ultimate weapon in this silent war Julia had initiated. That night, as darkness blanketed the city and silence enveloped my home, I crafted a careful, precise email to Daniel Harrison at Pinnacle Supply Group, a rival company eager to expand its commercial millwork division, a company that had unsuccessfully courted my clients for years. Pausing thoughtfully, I saved the email draft without sending it, a quiet promise of retribution waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. Julia had thrown down the gauntlet, initiating a battle whose implications stretched far beyond her initial calculations. Now it was my turn to respond, silently but decisively, determined to ensure that every action she'd taken against me would return to haunt her in ways she had never anticipated. As I finally allowed myself a quiet breath of anticipation, I recognized that Julia's cold ambition had inadvertently set the stage for an unforgettable drama of quiet revenge story that had barely begun, one she was utterly unprepared to confront, and one that would soon reveal exactly how dangerous it was to underestimate someone who had spent a lifetime cultivating loyalty, trust, and relationships. If you're ready to witness Alex's carefully plotted revenge unfold into an epic tale of quiet triumph, keep watching, because what happens next will leave you breathless. In the quiet solitude of my home office that night, as the amber glow of my desk lamp cast long shadows across a decade's worth of meticulously prepared sales records, I felt an unmistakable sense of purpose settling over Mia, purpose born, not of anger or spite, but of resolute clarity. My fingertips brushed slowly over each file, each representing countless hours of labor, personal sacrifice, and unwavering dedication. each relationship carefully cultivated through years of mutual trust and shared triumph. Julia Montgomery's cold-blooded maneuver had wounded me, yes, but her critical error lay in assuming the blow she'd dealt was fatal. In truth, her ruthless action had only clarified the playing field, revealing precisely the kind of game she was prepared to play, and compelling me to match her ruthlessness with strategic cunning. Picking up the phone, I dialed Daniel Harrison, the charismatic and ambitious head of Pinnacle Supply Group, a fierce competitor long frustrated by his inability to break through the ironclad relationships I'd built at GreenWood. Daniel had openly admired my skills during industry conferences, subtly indicating a desire to recruit me, yet always respecting my steadfast loyalty to Oliver Wainwright's company. Tonight, however, loyalty to GreenWood no longer held sway, severed abruptly by Julia's blade of corporate ambition. I understood that Daniel represented my best chance not merely for survival, but for redemption, for reclaiming the dignity and value Julia had callously stripped from me. As the phone rang softly, each gentle tone resonated with anticipation, my pulse quickening slightly when Daniel answered warmly, clearly surprised but genuinely pleased to hear my voice at such an unconventional hour. Our conversation flowed smoothly, marked by mutual respect and understanding, each word carefully measured to balance professional courtesy with subtle urgency. Without explicitly soliciting a position, I shared just enough about recent events to ignite Daniel's intrigue, to hint at opportunities without compromising my legal obligations to GreenWood. He understood immediately, skillfully navigating our discussion toward his own aspirations for Pinnacle's commercial millwork division. Daniel's voice carried genuine enthusiasm as he described a position tailored precisely to my strengths. Senior Vice President of Business Development, with full autonomy to build and lead an entirely new sales team from the ground. Exactly the type of role Julia had sought to deny me. Yet, aware of the delicate nature of my non-compete agreement, I made it clear that my initial focus would be broader than millwork, strategically centered around building supply chains and relationships outside the restrictive confines Julia's attorneys had outlined. Daniel agreed without hesitation, understanding the subtle implications hidden beneath our polite discourse. He knew, as did I, that my true strength lay not solely in the products I sold, but in the unbreakable relationships I had built over 15 painstaking years. Before ending the call, I requested a night to finalize my decision, not out of hesitation, but to methodically examine every angle of the chessboard upon which Julia had unwisely chosen to challenge me. Daniel graciously obliged, confident he'd offered me precisely the lifeline I needed, unaware that I had already begun quietly formulating a calculated, precise, and devastating response to the betrayal Julia had mistakenly believed would cripple me. Early the next morning, as sunlight spilled gently through my office windows, casting a warm, reassuring glow across my desk, my phone buzzed again, this time revealing multiple missed calls from clients whose trust Julia had recklessly disturbed. Frank Donnelly's name flashed urgently once more, prompting me to dial him immediately, sensing a critical development had occurred overnight. Frank wasted no time, his voice tense with irritation, outlining how Julia had personally called him again at dawn, aggressively pressing him into reconsidering his long-standing contract terms and openly criticizing my antiquated approach to managing accounts. "Alex," Frank snapped with barely restrained anger. I told her explicitly that Weston Commercial's loyalty was to the person who'd earned it, not to some faceless corporate entity, but she just wouldn't listen. The woman practically threatened me, saying the board was considering drastic measures if I didn't comply. Listening intently, my heart surged with fierce determination, recognizing immediately the tactical error Julia had committed by openly antagonizing my closest ally. Her misguided strategy had crossed an invisible line, shifting Frank's loyalty from GreenWood directly toward wherever I chose to stand next. I explained calmly, deliberately, that my departure from GreenWood was certain, though I refrained carefully from soliciting his business outright. Frank, however, hardly needed prompting. His voice firm and decisive, he simply declared, "Alex, when you land at your next destination, call me first. Wherever you go, we're coming with you." In that moment, I felt the first domino of Julia's impending downfall shift irrevocably forward, setting off a chain reaction that would reverberate far beyond her short-sighted calculations. Later that afternoon, as I methodically packed away the remnants of my professional life at GreenWood's headquarters, saw observing quiet whispers exchanged between my colleagues, their sympathetic eyes acknowledging the injustice inflicted upon me, I felt a familiar presence approach discreetly. Thomas Gallagher stepped near, silently handing me a folded sheet of paper without meeting my eyes, quickly disappearing down the corridor before Julia or her loyalists could notice our exchange. Alone, in the stillness of the now nearly empty office, I unfolded Thomas's note, revealing a comprehensive list of every significant client I'd ever managed, along with precise revenue figures significantly higher than the conservative estimates I'd maintained for years. Scribbled hastily at the bottom, Thomas had added a simple, poignant message. "Julia's next move is to blame you when revenues start collapsing. Protect yourself. Alex, these numbers are your shield." That evening, armed with this critical information, I officially accepted Daniel's generous offer, carefully crafted my resignation letter, and promptly scheduled a discreet meeting with my attorney to examine the exact terms of my non-compete agreement. As expected, my lawyer confirmed what I'd already deduced: the agreement strictly prohibited selling competitive millwork products for 6 months, but crucially left open a clear and invaluable loophole. Maintaining client relationships remained fully within my rights. This revelation sealed Julia's fate, transforming her seemingly devastating betrayal into a stunning strategic miscalculation she was about to bitterly regret. That night, beneath the quiet hum of my home office, I meticulously organized a careful plan, never breaching my contractual obligations, never openly soliciting a single client, yet positioning myself clearly as the safest harbor amidst Julia's growing chaos. Each carefully timed conversation, every strategic word I spoke, would slowly erode GreenWood's hold over clients whose trust Julia foolishly underestimated, steadily steering them toward pinnacle supply groups awaiting embrace. With calculated patience, I laid out each step precisely, envisioning clearly how Julia's arrogance would crumble beneath the weight of consequences she never saw coming, consequences born not from impulsive anger, but from deliberate, patient resolve. As dawn broke over the city the following day, I gazed confidently out my window, understanding fully that the tides had irreversibly shifted, that Julia's misguided attempt at destroying me had instead handed me every tool necessary to dismantle her ambitions entirely. She had struck first, believing me defenseless and defeated, yet now, in the cold clarity of morning, she was unknowingly staring down the barrel of a quiet, relentless vengeance she could neither foresee nor escape. Eager to see how Alex's calculated revenge unfolds, turning Julia's ruthless ambition into her greatest downfall? Stay tuned, because the real drama has only just begun. In the quiet days that followed my calculated departure from GreenWood Industries, the ripple effects of Julia Montgomery's aggressive strategy quickly turned into waves of unrest, shaking the once stable foundation of trust I had carefully cultivated with my most loyal clients. Although I had deliberately chosen silence, never directly soliciting a single account, I watched patiently from a distance, knowing instinctively that loyalty built on genuine trust and friendship would ultimately prove far more resilient than any cold corporate mandate Julia could enforce. As I anticipated, the storm arrived swiftly, triggered not by my own intervention, but by Julia's relentless attempts to reshape my former accounts to match her impersonal vision attempts, which inevitably ignited friction, suspicion, and resentment from the clients who had always valued human connection above transactional efficiency. The first call came early one morning from Harold Lang, the charismatic and fiercely loyal CEO of Northwell Construction, whose sharp tone immediately conveyed his frustration, a barely concealed anger that simmered just beneath his practiced professional courtesy. "Alex," Harold began sharply, his voice tight with irritation, I just got off a call with Julia Montgomery, and frankly, I don't know who she thinks she's talking to after 10 solid years of partnership. She's demanding we change payment terms, claiming our established structure needs optimization. She wants immediate shifts from net 45 days down to 30, without so much as a prior conversation or respect for what you and I built together. Harold's voice grew steadily more agitated, his resentment palpable as he described Julia's insensitive, aggressive approach, treating his established procedures and preferences as inconvenient hurdles rather than carefully nurtured agreements built over years of mutual respect and understanding. Listening intently, I carefully maintained my composure, mindful of never openly disparaging GreenWood or Julia directly. Yet, Harold hardly needed prompting from me. "Alex," he continued firmly, lowering his voice to a tone of quiet resolve, "if you're no longer with GreenWood, you need to tell me exactly where you're headed. Because I refuse to be pushed around by someone who clearly doesn't value relationships." With a calculated and diplomatic precision, I gently informed Harold of my new role at Pinnacle Supply Group, carefully emphasizing my non-compete limitations regarding millwork products, yet subtly highlighting Pinnacle's diverse capabilities beyond Julia's restrictive grasp. Harold's immediate response validated everything I'd expected. "Pinnacle handles similar products, don't they? Good, then you and I have plenty to discuss. Call me Monday." With those decisive words, Harold had quietly but unmistakably drawn his line, signaling his intention to follow trust over convenience, relationships over empty promises. Throughout the subsequent days, Harold's reaction proved anything but isolated. Instead, it was merely the first domino in a carefully orchestrated cascade of client frustration and dissatisfaction. Soon after, I received an urgent call from Weston Commercial's Frank Donnelly, whose exasperation was even more pronounced, triggered by Julia's misguided attempts to impress him with flashy metrics and automated processes. Frank described Julia's repeated, desperate attempts to secure his loyalty through impersonal presentations and rigid questionnaires that ignored every nuance of our carefully nurtured relationship. Every subtle detail built through long evenings spent solving crises and celebrating triumphs together. His frustration boiled over openly when he told me bluntly, "Your replacement is drowning us in pointless metrics, Alex. 48 questions in a client satisfaction survey. Does she honestly believe loyalty can be measured by some soulless corporate scorecard?" As Frank spoke passionately, I could feel his trust shifting irrevocably toward wherever I stood, his voice carrying the determination of a man who recognized clearly the genuine value I had always provided. Without hesitation, Frank concluded emphatically, "The minute you're settled at Pinnacle, call me." I refuse to spend another minute dealing with someone who can't comprehend the fundamental meaning of partnership. This unequivocal declaration reinforced the silent, yet powerful strategy I'd set in motion. Julia's arrogance had already sown the seeds of her downfall, and each angry client call simply nourished them further. Days turned to weeks, and Julia's repeated attempts at forcing rapid and dramatic changes continued to backfire spectacularly. Calls came flooding in from Westerly developers, Austin Modern Construction, regional builders, and suppliers, each conversation sharing a similar pattern of indignation, disillusionment, and disappointment. Julia had expected easy compliance, naive enough to believe that loyalty was a resource she could commodify and control, yet every action she took only deepened the growing divide between GreenWood Industries and the cherished clients she was rapidly alienating. Each call brought fresh details: sudden, unannounced price hikes, rigid and uncompromising payment structures, impersonal customer success presentations that entirely misunderstood the essence of the trust-based relationships I'd painstakingly fostered. And yet, I maintained careful restraint, responding professionally and respectfully, never openly soliciting or encouraging rebellion, allowing each client to independently arrive at their inevitable conclusion that Julia Montgomery had fundamentally misunderstood what truly made GreenWood successful. My careful neutrality became my strongest weapon, quietly reinforcing the stark contrast between Julia's rigid corporate vision and my steadfast commitment to trust, integrity, and authentic human connection. Behind the scenes, I methodically prepared Pinnacle Supply Group's infrastructure, meticulously crafting strategies designed specifically to welcome and accommodate these disillusioned clients the moment they finally severed their ties with GreenWood. One particular afternoon, as I carefully arranged logistics in Pinnacle's newly established division, my phone buzzed again, this time displaying Gabriella's number, my former protégé, who had been carefully seduced by Julia's promises. Her voice shook noticeably, a mixture of embarrassment and desperation, as she hesitantly confessed the chaos unfolding under Julia's rigid policies. Alex, I never imagined it could become this bad so quickly. Clients won't take my calls anymore, they keep asking for you, and Julia refuses to understand why her tactics aren't working. Gabriella's voice trailed off weakly, a clear indication of her regret. Yet I refrained from judgment, calmly suggesting she continue trying her best under difficult circumstances, aware she had unwittingly joined a rapidly sinking ship. Each conversation over the following weeks served not only as validation of my strategy, but as quiet confirmation that Julia's reckless gamble had transformed from confident ambition into a desperate struggle to retain control. Unwittingly, she had engineered the very conditions necessary for her own failure, systematically dismantling the core strength that had long set GreenWood apart: genuine human connection, loyalty built on mutual respect, and trust earned patiently over time. Julia had calculated her moves in spreadsheets, failing to recognize that relationships built on trust never fully translate into corporate algorithms. Loyalty cannot be commanded, only earned. As each client privately prepared to abandon GreenWood, silently gravitating toward my carefully prepared haven at Pinnacle, I recognized the poetic justice taking shape, the quiet revenge of loyalty triumphing decisively over arrogance. Julia Montgomery believed she had neutralized a costly relic, yet all along she had unknowingly activated a network far more powerful than any tool at her disposal. Unwavering trust, cultivated patiently over years of commitment, now rising quietly but unstoppably against her. If you're eager to witness the full extent of Alex's carefully orchestrated revenge as client loyalty shifts decisively in his favor, keep watching, because the most satisfying drama is still to come. As weeks quietly turned into months, the cracks Julia Montgomery had inflicted upon Trelock Woodworks widened steadily into a deepening chasm, threatening to swallow the very foundations of the company I'd once nurtured from humble beginnings. The calm, professional facade she had meticulously presented to the board now fractured visibly, exposing the mounting anxiety behind her polished exterior, as the harsh reality of client attrition began hitting the bottom line with devastating clarity. Each morning brought fresh crises to her elegant office, delivered coldly by revenue reports, stained with glaring shades of red, each number a silent indictment of her drastic miscalculations and the reckless arrogance that had guided her decisions. First came Northwell Construction, the powerhouse client whose abrupt departure had sent tremors throughout Trelock's executive team, a stark warning that Julia's strategy was spiraling dangerously out of control. Harold Lang, infuriated by relentless price hikes and Julia's uncompromising payment demands, publicly severed their decade-long partnership in an unmistakable message of protest, shifting his lucrative accounts swiftly and decisively into my waiting hands at Pinnacle Supply Group. Julia, stubbornly believing her new metrics-driven approach would swiftly recapture lost revenue, scrambled desperately to conceal the damaging news from shareholders. Yet her hastily fabricated assurances to the board rang increasingly hollow with each subsequent departure. Weston Commercial soon followed, a seismic blow to Trelock's reputation, driven by Frank Donnelly's unwavering loyalty to the relationships I had personally cultivated over 12 years. Frank's public defection carried the sharp sting of personal betrayal for Julia, who had arrogantly believed her aggressive tactics and empty promises could quickly erase the bonds of trust painstakingly built through years of patient negotiation and genuine human connection. Instead, Frank's decision shattered any remaining illusions of Julia's supposed efficiency. igniting a wave of doubt among remaining clients, each quietly recalculating their own loyalties as Julia struggled fruitlessly to contain the growing crisis. Triolog's conference rooms soon became tense arenas of whispered accusations and thinly veiled panic. As Julia faced mounting scrutiny from executives and board members alarmed by the increasingly catastrophic financial projections, her once confident voice, renowned for its persuasive charm, now trembled imperceptibly during strained presentations, her carefully rehearsed excuses dissolving under pointed questions from skeptical board members, demanding explanations for declining revenue streams and deteriorating client satisfaction scores. Desperate to stem the bleeding, Julia hastily implemented even harsher measures, raising prices yet again across all legacy accounts in a frantic bid to salvage profitability, a decision that backfired spectacularly, alienating the few remaining loyal clients who had cautiously endured her prior policies. One evening, under the cover of anonymity, Thomas Gallagher discreetly reached out to me, arranging a clandestine meeting at a dimly lit downtown cafe to share a devastating revelation. With tense, careful movements, Thomas presented documents detailing internal board discussions and Julia's increasingly desperate tactics, strategic maneuvers designed to deflect blame directly onto me, utilizing fabricated narratives and exaggerated audits of my past expense reports. His voice hushed with genuine concern. Thomas explained, "Alex, she's trying to rewrite history, to portray you as irresponsible and reckless, laying the groundwork to justify client losses as solely your fault." His revelations, while troubling, only reinforced my determination, confirming the extent of Julia's desperation and providing vital clarity about her crumbling defenses. Meanwhile, Gabriella, the talented young recruit Julia had once considered her rising star, found herself trapped in the destructive aftermath of Julia's misguided policies. Struggling daily to maintain client relations amid escalating hostility, Gabriella eventually approached me privately, remorseful and deeply shaken by the toxic environment Julia's leadership had created. Her voice trembled with regret, recounting endless nights spent fielding angry calls, desperately attempting to mitigate Julia's rigid demands without success. "Alex, clients don't want promises anymore. They demand someone they trust, someone like you," she confessed quietly, her words revealing the true cost of Julia's short-sighted strategy. The final nail in the coffin arrived swiftly, during Triloc's quarterly investor gala carefully orchestrated event that quickly unraveled into a public spectacle. Raymond Peters, the newly appointed CEO, was forced into an uncomfortable position by aggressive questioning from analysts who had begun uncovering rumors of massive client defections. Struggling to maintain composure, Raymond stammered awkwardly, desperately attempting to deflect questions regarding Triloc's rapidly deteriorating revenues, his vague reassurances sounding increasingly hollow and unconvincing. Yet, when pressed directly about Weston Commercial's public shift to Pinnacle Supply Group, Raymond's prolonged silence spoke louder than words ever could, brutally exposing the harsh truth. Julia's strategy had failed spectacularly, endangering the company's very survival. The fallout was swift and merciless. Industry news outlets seized upon the scandal, publishing headlines boldly declaring Triloc's struggles, with analysts openly questioning Julia's leadership. The damage to Triloc's reputation grew exponentially, each article a stark reflection of her misguided arrogance and relentless ambition. Within days, Julia's carefully constructed narrative collapsed entirely, prompting an internal announcement that she had been reassigned to strategic initiatives, a thinly disguised exile, marking the humiliating end of her brief yet devastating tenure. Observing from the comfort of my Pinnacle office, I felt no vindictive pleasure, only quiet validation that trust, loyalty, and genuine relationships inevitably triumphed over arrogance and corporate manipulation. Julia had grossly underestimated the silent strength of relationships meticulously cultivated over years, believing herself invincible behind spreadsheets and efficiency metrics. Yet, in the end, it was precisely these intangible bonds of trust and human connection that delivered the decisive blow, dismantling her carefully crafted image piece by piece, exposing the fundamental flaws in her cold, impersonal approach. As I quietly prepared to welcome more clients fleeing Trillock's sinking ship, I recognized clearly that my strategy had succeeded precisely because it was founded upon values Julia could neither comprehend nor replicate, values of integrity, patience, and genuine care. Julia's own ruthless ambition had unwittingly crafted her downfall, handing me not only vindication but also an invaluable lesson, reaffirming everything my father had taught me long ago. True success lies not in cold numbers, but in the trust and loyalty built through genuine human connection. And now, as Trillock reeled from Julia Montgomery's catastrophic decisions, her calculated betrayal had fully come home to roost, leaving her reputation shattered, her career prospects diminished, and the company I'd once proudly built struggling to salvage its future. Julia had played her cards boldly and recklessly, failing spectacularly to grasp that the strongest foundations cannot be measured by spreadsheets or controlled through corporate mandates. In the quiet satisfaction of my office at Pinnacle, I knew precisely who had won this silent, relentless war, and more importantly, I knew exactly why. Intrigued by the powerful climax still awaiting Julia's ultimate reckoning? Keep watching, because the drama and satisfaction of Alex's revenge are only just beginning. 6 months after stepping into my new office at Pinnacle Supply Group, the once tentative murmurs of doubt and curiosity about my departure from Trillock had transformed into emphatic whispers of admiration and intrigue, echoing through industry circles and boardrooms alike. Pinnacle's spacious conference room, once quiet and modest, now buzzed energetically with anticipation as my carefully hand-picked team, vibrant with fresh ambition, awaited the unveiling of quarterly results that promised undeniable proof of our collective triumph. Sunlight streamed through expansive glass windows, illuminating faces filled with anticipation, their confidence buoyed by the strategic victories we had methodically achieved in such a short span of time. Standing before them, feeling the quiet pulse of pride surge gently in my chest, I revealed our performance figures on the towering presentation screen. Each meticulously charted number, a testament not only to Pinnacle's burgeoning dominance, but also to the power of relationships I had tirelessly nurtured over 15 challenging yet rewarding years. The room filled with quiet awe as our new business revenue flashed boldly on the screen, $13.7 million within our first 2 quarters, with projections confidently pointing toward an extraordinary $22 million by year's end numbers, not merely impressive, but transformative, signaling clearly to everyone present that Pinnacle's resurgence was nothing short of remarkable. Daniel Harrison, Pinnacle's visionary leader who had confidently bet on my reputation and ability, entered the room at precisely the right moment, carrying a celebratory bottle of champagne as a symbolic acknowledgement of our success. His eyes sparkled with pride and genuine admiration, reflecting the trust he had placed in me, trust that had been rewarded many times over by the remarkable client loyalty and exceptional performance my team had secured. The board unanimously approved your division's expansion proposal, Daniel announced enthusiastically, his voice resonating warmly as he carefully uncorked the champagne. Your efforts have earned Pinnacle additional resources, expanded staff, and an increased marketing budget, everything you requested to fuel continued growth. As glasses clinked softly and genuine smiles filled the room, a subtle vibration from my phone momentarily drew my attention. A text message from Thomas Gallagher, now my trusted ally, quietly navigating Trillock's internal politics. His brief message carried intrigue and urgency. Trillock's quarterly earnings call starts in 30 minutes, might want to tune in. Stepping discreetly away from the celebration, I carefully dialed into the investor call, my heart quickening slightly in anticipation of witnessing the full consequences of Julia Montgomery's catastrophic decisions. On the call, Trillock's recently appointed CEO, Raymond Peters, sounded audibly strained, desperately attempting to maintain a veneer of control despite the undeniable chaos surrounding him. Analysts, Sensing vulnerability, like sharks circling prey, relentlessly pressed Raymond for clarity on rapidly declining revenues. Demanding explanations for the staggering client losses Julia had unsuccessfully attempted to downplay. "Mr. Peters," one analyst inquired sharply, her tone uncompromising. "Industry reports indicate Trilloc has hemorrhaged nearly 20% of its annual revenue over just 2 quarters. Can you confirm these figures?" A tense silence lingered, heavy and uncomfortable, as Raymond stumbled awkwardly, struggling to respond coherently. Another analyst quickly pressed further, zeroing in mercilessly on Triloc's largest account defection. "Is it accurate that your most significant client, Weston Commercial, recently shifted their entire purchasing arrangement to Pinnacle Supply Group? Could you elaborate on the implications?" Raymond's stammered deflections only underscored Triloc's increasingly desperate situation, and as he fumbled through vague reassurances, I quietly recognized the subtle satisfaction of knowing my silent revenge had delivered its decisive, impactful blow. Returning calmly to Pinnacle's celebration, Daniel caught my thoughtful expression, quietly stepping beside me, sensing the moment's significance. "Everything okay, Jeffrey?" he asked gently, curiosity evident in his quiet tone. With measured composure, I nodded, subtly revealing, "Just confirmation that our strategy succeeded exactly as planned," the understated triumph evident in my words carrying powerful meaning, underscoring the quiet yet relentless vengeance I had carefully orchestrated without ever raising my voice or violating a single professional boundary. Days later, industry newsletters widely publicized Triloc's internal crisis, detailing significant client departures and clearly attributing their rapid decline to Julia's fundamentally misguided strategies. Analysts publicly acknowledged my pivotal role in Pinnacle's extraordinary success, recognizing explicitly how my patient cultivation of trust and genuine relationships had decisively altered the industry's competitive landscape. An anonymous Trilloc employee was quoted bluntly, highlighting how disastrously Julia had misunderstood the true value of experienced leadership, ultimately undermining the very relationships responsible for Trilloc's previous success. In the following weeks, a surprising email appeared in my inbox from Gabriella, once Julia's prized protégé who had initially embraced her misguided vision. Her message, simply titled, "Any openings at Pinnacle?" Gabriella's quiet humility signaled clearly how thoroughly Julia's toxic policies had eroded even her staunchest internal supporters, exposing the deep cracks beneath Triloc's now ruined foundations. As Pinnacle's client list steadily grew, meticulously welcoming former Trilloc clients who arrived willingly and gratefully, I took special care to ensure every transition proceeded flawlessly, each order meticulously confirmed, every shipment personally verified, each client interaction reinforcing precisely why they had chosen to follow loyalty rather than submit to Julia's impersonal demands. Word spread rapidly throughout our industry, quietly positioning Pinnacle as the new standard-bearer of customer trust, reliability, and authentic human connections. One afternoon, unexpectedly, Julia herself called, her voice tightly restrained yet carrying unmistakable desperation beneath its brittle surface. "Jeffrey, we need to talk," she began abruptly, her usual confidence now absent. We arranged to meet discreetly at a quiet coffee shop near Pinnacle's headquarters, her presence noticeably diminished, eyes reflecting weariness and vulnerability where once arrogance had reigned supreme. Without greeting, she launched directly into her accusation, her voice tense. "You have to stop poaching our clients, Jeffrey. It's unethical and clearly violates your obligations." Maintaining careful professionalism, I calmly clarified the truth. "Julia, I haven't solicited a single client. Each has independently chosen loyalty over your aggressive, impersonal policies. Your strategy drove them away, not mine." Frustration cracked her polished demeanor as she insisted desperately, her voice trembling slightly. "You're exploiting loopholes. Jeffrey, this isn't ethical." Quietly but firmly, I reminded her. "The terms of the non-compete agreement, your agreement, are clear. Perhaps your lawyers should have considered relationships, not just products." As she departed abruptly, visibly defeated and struggling to mask humiliation, I recognized clearly the culmination of my quiet, yet profound revenge. Julia's arrogance had imploded spectacularly, her ruthless ambition replaced entirely by desperation and defeat. Pinnacle's extraordinary success was undeniable proof that authentic human connections, integrity, and patient loyalty always triumph decisively over ruthless corporate arrogance. Returning confidently to my office, I gazed proudly at my rapidly growing team, their smiles reflecting genuine joy and pride, and recognized fully how much greater this victory was precisely because it was built patiently, ethically, and strategically. Julia had gambled boldly against relationships she failed utterly to understand, and in doing so, she handed me a quiet but deeply satisfying victory proof that true revenge, delivered with quiet dignity and unwavering professionalism, resonates far more powerfully than any harsh words or loud confrontations ever could. Eager to witness the satisfying conclusion of Jeffrey's quiet but powerful revenge? Stay tuned, because the final act promises to redefine triumph in ways you'll never forget. Exactly 1 year after Julia Montgomery had stood across from me, coldly announcing that my compensation was outdated and my contributions expendable, I found myself seated comfortably in a spacious office at Pinnacle Supply Group, bathed in the soft glow of the evening sun. This office, now significantly larger and more elegantly appointed, represented not just my professional resurgence but also a profound personal redemption, affirming the true value of relationships built patiently through trust and unwavering loyalty. The figures spread across my desk reflected a remarkable achievement: $26.3 million in new business, far exceeding even my most ambitious projections. Each number a quiet yet undeniable testament to the powerful bonds I had nurtured carefully and deliberately throughout my career. Surrounding me were photographs capturing heartfelt memories, moments of genuine camaraderie with my growing team, smiles filled with gratitude and pride, and celebrations reflecting the authentic joy of shared success. These images stood in stark contrast to the emptiness that had permeated my final days at Trillock Woodworks, silently reminding me that revenge need not be loud nor destructive. It could be quiet, strategic, and devastatingly effective, built methodically through actions rather than words. Daniel Harrison had recently hinted at the potential for a board position, a subtle acknowledgement that my influence and integrity extended far beyond mere sales figures or recognition. Julia had fundamentally failed to grasp. As I contemplated this quiet triumph, my assistant gently interrupted, announcing an unexpected visitor, Julia Montgomery herself, now humbly requesting a brief audience without an appointment. With composed curiosity, I instructed my assistant to show her in, noting immediately the striking transformation evident in Julia's demeanor. Gone was the arrogant confidence and polished bravado she once wore effortlessly. In its place stood a visibly diminished woman, eyes subtly betraying weariness and vulnerability as she approached hesitantly, her presence quietly requesting something far deeper than a mere professional courtesy. Without waiting for an invitation, Julia spoke softly yet earnestly, her voice now stripped entirely of its former arrogance. "Thank you for agreeing to see me, Jeffrey. I'm currently working as a consultant for Hamilton Group, and I'm developing a case study about client retention strategies. Your success here at Pinnacle is remarkable. Would you consider sharing your insights?" Her words carried a faint undertone of humility, yet I sensed a deeper plea within them, not merely a request for professional guidance, but an implicit acknowledgement of regret, perhaps even a subtle longing for absolution. Meeting her eyes calmly, I replied evenly, ensuring my tone remained professional yet firm, devoid of bitterness or lingering resentment. "Julia, I believe you already understand the essence of my approach. Relationships are never about metrics or formulas. They're built on genuine human connection, trust cultivated over time, and integrity demonstrated through consistent actions. Those are values you once dismissed as outdated but are precisely what brought your strategies down." The quiet impact of my words registered clearly in her eyes, reflecting an unmistakable recognition that her ruthless ambition had irrevocably blinded her to the fundamental truths I had always understood deeply. Julia nodded silently, a quiet acknowledgement of her profound miscalculation, softly admitting, "I made a terrible mistake, Jeffrey. I underestimated the strength of loyalty and the true power of personal relationships, and it cost Trillock dearly. It cost me everything." Her voice, tinged with genuine remorse, resonated poignantly in the quiet space between us, offering a profound lesson not only for her but for anyone tempted to believe success could ever truly exist without integrity or human connection at its core. For a moment, silence settled quietly, heavy with the weight of reflection and lessons learned through bitter experience. Finally, Julia carefully placed her business card upon my desk, her gesture an unspoken hope for future reconciliation, or perhaps redemption. Yet, as she turned to leave, I gently but deliberately slid the card toward the shredder, a quiet yet clear symbol that forgiveness could exist without reconciliation, that lessons learned did not erase the consequences of choices made recklessly. Watching her depart, I felt neither satisfaction nor regret, only a profound sense of closure and quiet triumph, affirming once more that the deepest victories never required vindictive actions or harsh words. They required only patience, resilience, and unwavering commitment to core values. That evening, as twilight gently enveloped the city skyline, I arrived at my daughter's newly purchased home, welcomed warmly by her radiant smile, celebrating her recent promotion to senior architect at her firm. Sitting peacefully on her sunlit patio, she turned to me, curiosity evident in her eyes, asking quietly, "How's work, Dad?" Her question prompted a thoughtful pause. Before I responded sincerely, "It's good, really good. I'm finally building something truly lasting." The words resonated deeply, quietly encapsulating the profound journey I had navigated, from painful betrayal, through strategic patience, to genuine triumph rooted firmly in integrity and loyalty. Reflecting quietly beneath the soft evening sky, I recognized clearly the invaluable gift Julia had unintentionally provided through her ruthless betrayal of the opportunity to reaffirm powerfully the timeless lessons my father had imparted years ago. That success was never truly measured by profits alone, but by the depth of relationships cultivated patiently, respectfully, and authentically. Julia's misguided ambition had ultimately served not as a defeat, but as profound validation of everything I had ever believed about integrity, trust, and quiet resilience. Now, in the serene aftermath of quiet victory, I felt genuinely grateful not simply for the professional success I had achieved, but for the deeper, lasting truths reaffirmed through trial and redemption. Each step taken along this quiet journey of revenge had proven not destructive, but transformative, shaping clearly the quiet dignity with which I now navigated my life, proudly anchored by unwavering principles rather than shallow ambitions. My quiet revenge had served not merely as vindication, but as powerful affirmation of the timeless value inherent within genuine integrity, loyalty, and human connection, truths far more enduring than fleeting victories or shallow vindictiveness. Turning gently to face the camera, I share this lesson directly with you, my dear viewers. Remember that true success is never built solely on numbers or power, but upon the relationships and trust we patiently nurture throughout our lives. If you've ever faced betrayal or injustice, choose integrity and resilience. Allow them to become your quiet yet powerful revenge. If this story resonated deeply within your heart, please hit the subscribe button and share this video with anyone who might benefit from its powerful message. Leave a comment below telling me how you would handle such betrayal, because your stories and thoughts matter. Thank you for watching, and remember, integrity will always win in the end.